I woke up in a hospital bed with a machine counting my heartbeats. And the first face I saw was my ex-wife, smiling through tears, gripping my hand like she'd never let go, whispering, "I was so worried about you." But this was the same woman I'd divorced 2 years ago. The woman I walked away from to marry someone I thought was better. And here's what stopped my breath cold. My ex-wife was crying at my bedside, like her whole world had almost ended. But my current wife, the woman I'd chosen over her, was nowhere in that room. The last thing I remembered before the darkness was our argument. My hands shaking on the steering wheel, that sick question pounding in my skull. Had I just made the worst decision of my entire life? Then headlights. Then nothing. Now I was awake, but the wrong woman was holding my hand, and she was holding it like the right one. Why was the ex-wife I'd abandoned the only person who came running? Where was the wife I'd traded her for? And why did the sight of my ex's tears feel more like home than anything my marriage had given me in 2 years? And what was she about to tell me that would rewrite everything I thought I knew about the day I let her go? I tried to speak, but my throat was dry as sand. All that came out was her name, Grace. She let out a broken laugh, the kind that lives right between crying and relief. "I'm here. I'm right here. Don't try to move." The room smelled like cold plastic, and something sharp underneath it. That hospital smell that gets into your memory and never leaves. A thin blanket lay over my legs. My head felt like someone had wrapped it in wet wool. And there was Grace, leaning over me, her hair falling loose around her face the way it used to fall on the pillow beside me a long time ago. She looked older than I remembered, or maybe just tired. But her eyes were exactly the same. Soft brown, and looking at me like I was the only thing in the world worth looking at. Nobody had looked at me like that in 2 years. "What happened?" I whispered. "You were in an accident," she said gently. "Your car. They said a truck ran the light. You've been out for almost a full day. A whole day of my life. Gone." I searched my mind for the pieces and found only fog. Headlights, a scream of metal, and before that, a kitchen. Raised voices. Vanessa's face, twisted and cold. I couldn't hold the memory. It slipped away like water through my fingers. "Grace," I said, and my voice cracked. "Why are you here?" She went very still. For a second, something crossed her face. A flicker of pain, quickly hidden, the way you hide a wound so the person you love won't worry. Then she smiled again, but this smile was smaller. "The hospital called me," she said. "You never changed your emergency contact, Daniel. After everything, it's still me." I stared at her. 2 years divorced. 2 years since I'd signed the papers that ended us. 2 years since I'd looked her in the eye and told her I'd found something better, something more. And in all that time, in all my rushing toward my shiny new life, I had never once thought to erase her name from the one form that mattered when everything went dark. It was still Grace. When my heart stopped and started again, when a stranger picked up a phone to find out who in the world would come for me, the name they found was hers. And she came. Something hot pressed behind my eyes, and I turned my face away so she wouldn't see it. "You didn't have to come," I managed. "Yes, I did," she said simply. Like it wasn't even a question. Like the sky being blue. That was the thing about Grace. She never made you beg for her kindness. She just gave it, quietly, the way she'd given it every single day we were married. Packing my lunch when money was tight, sitting up with me the night I lost my job, believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. And I had looked at all of that gentleness, all of that devotion, and I had decided it wasn't enough. Because Vanessa had walked into my office in a red dress and made me feel like a king. Because Vanessa had laughed at my jokes and touched my arm and made my quiet, good life with Grace feel small and gray. Because I was a fool who confused fireworks for a fire that lasts. "Where's Ellie?" I asked suddenly, panic rising. "Is she?" "She's fine. She's with my mother." Grace squeezed my hand. "She doesn't know yet. I didn't want to scare her. But Daniel," her voice dropped, "she asks about you. Every day. She still asks. Every day. My little girl, 5 years old, still asking for a father who had walked out to build a new life across town. A father who called on birthdays and holidays and told himself that was enough. That word again. Enough. The lie I kept telling myself to sleep at night. I closed my eyes. The heart monitor beeped a little faster, and Grace's hand tightened around mine, steady, anchoring, like she could hold me together through sheer will. "Rest," she whispered. "You're safe now. I've got you. I've got you." She used to say that. In the dark, when I couldn't sleep, when the weight of being a man who couldn't provide the way he wanted to sat on my chest like a stone, she'd curl against my back and say those 3 words. And somehow they were more than money, more than success, more than anything Vanessa ever gave me wrapped in perfume and promises. "I've got you." I had thrown that away. The door opened. I felt Grace stiffen before I even turned my head. And when I looked, there she was, Vanessa, my wife, standing in the doorway in heels that clicked too loud for a hospital, sunglasses pushed up on her head, a designer bag over her shoulder that cost more than my first car. She did not run to me. She did not cry. She looked at the room, at the machines, at me lying there bandaged and small, at Grace holding my hand, and the first thing that crossed her beautiful face was not relief. It was irritation. "Oh good, you're awake," Vanessa said flatly, like I'd overslept and made her late. "Do you have any idea what a nightmare this has been? I've been on the phone with the insurance people all morning. All morning, Daniel." I couldn't speak. I just stared at her. She finally stepped closer, her eyes sliding to Grace, and her lip curled. What is she doing here? Grace didn't rise to it. She just stood, smooth and calm, and gently placed my hand back on the blanket. "I'll give you two some privacy," she said quietly. No, the word came out of me before I could stop it. Desperate. Too fast. Both women looked at me. I swallowed. "Grace, please, stay." The silence that followed was so heavy I could hear the monitor counting my heart. Beep, 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 faster now, giving me away. Vanessa's eyes narrowed into something dangerous. Grace's lips parted in surprise. And in that frozen moment, with the wrong wife standing in the doorway and the right one halfway out of it, I understood something that hit me harder than any truck ever could. I had spent 2 years running toward a woman who checked her phone while I lay dying, and running away from the one who dropped everything to hold my hand. "Wow," Vanessa said, cold as ice. "Really, Daniel? You almost die and the first thing you do is beg your ex to stay?" She let out a sharp, ugly laugh. "You know what? Fine. Have your little reunion. I need coffee. This place is depressing." She turned on her heel, heels clicking, and tossed over her shoulder. "Oh, and the doctor said the car's totaled. So that's just fantastic." The door swung shut behind her. She never asked if I was in pain. She never asked what I remembered. She never asked if I was afraid. She asked about the car. I stared at that closed door for a long, long moment, and when I finally turned back to Grace, I saw she was watching me. Not with triumph, not with "I told you so," but with something that broke me clean in half. Pity. And underneath it, an old, patient love she'd never quite managed to put down. "Grace," I whispered. "What have I done?" She sat back down slowly. She didn't answer that. Maybe there was no answer that wouldn't hurt too much. Instead, she reached out and, so softly, I almost didn't feel it, brushed a strand of hair off my forehead. The exact gesture she used to do for Ellie when she had a fever. "Get some sleep, Daniel," she said. "We'll talk when you're stronger." But I didn't want to sleep. I was afraid that if I closed my eyes, she'd be gone when I opened them, and I'd be alone with a woman who cared more about a wrecked car than a wrecked husband. "Stay till I fall asleep?" I asked. I sounded like a child. I sounded like Ellie. Grace's eyes filled again. She nodded. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. And as the fog pulled me back down into the dark, I held onto those words like a rope over a cliff. I'm not going anywhere. The woman I'd left. The only one who stayed. But even as sleep took me, a splinter of memory surfaced. That argument in the kitchen. The one that sent me speeding into the night. Vanessa's voice, screaming something at me. And my own voice, screaming back a name. Grace's name. Why had I been screaming Grace's name at Vanessa the night of the crash? What had we been fighting about? And what was the thing Grace wasn't telling me? The thing I could see her holding back every time she looked at me. The secret sitting right behind her gentle eyes, waiting. I didn't know it yet. But it was going to change everything. Sleep took me down into the dark. and the dark gave me back the thing I'd been trying so hard to forget. The kitchen. Our kitchen? No. Vanessa's kitchen. The one with the marble counters she'd insisted on. The ones that cost as much as a year of Ellie's school. I was standing by the window with my car keys in my hand, and Vanessa was screaming. "You still love her," she shrieked. "Don't you dare lie to me, Daniel. You said her name in your sleep again. Grace. Your precious, boring little Grace." "Stop it," I'd said. My voice was tired. So tired. "No. You stop it." She threw something. A glass. And it shattered against the wall beside me. "I gave up everything for you. I need that money, Daniel. My sister's getting married, and I will not show up looking poor. You'll transfer it tonight, or I swear." "That money is Ellie's," I said quietly. "It's for my daughter's future, not your sister's wedding dress." And that's when Vanessa said the thing. The thing that made me grab my keys and run into the night. She smiled, cold and cruel and sure of herself. And she said, "Your daughter. That's funny. You want to know something about your perfect little family? You want to know why Grace really let you go so easily?" I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Ask her," Vanessa said, savoring it. "Ask your saint of an ex-wife what she did. Ask her what she gave up for you. Then come back and tell me she's so much better than me." "You're lying." "Am I?" She laughed. Go run to her. But when you find out the truth, don't come crying to me." And I ran. I got in my car, and my hands were shaking, and that sick question was pounding in my skull. Had I made the worst decision of my life? And I wasn't even sure anymore which decision I meant. Leaving Grace? Marrying Vanessa? Or the divorce papers I'd signed 2 years ago without ever asking Grace why she'd agreed to them so quietly? Without a fight? Without a single tear that I saw? That was the thing that had always haunted me. Grace loved me. I knew she loved me. So why, when I told her I was leaving, had she just let me go? No begging, no screaming, just a quiet nod and a whisper, "If that's what will make you happy, Daniel." I'd told myself she didn't fight because she didn't care enough. But what if I'd had it backwards this whole time? Headlights. Then nothing. My eyes snapped open. The hospital room was dim now, the lights lowered for night. My heart was slamming against my ribs, and the monitor screamed it out loud. Beep, 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 beep. Fast and frantic. And Grace was still there. She'd fallen asleep in the chair beside my bed, her hand still resting over mine, her head tilted at an angle that would leave her neck aching in the morning. She hadn't left. Through the whole night, she hadn't left. I looked at her sleeping face in the blue glow of the machines, and the question Vanessa had planted burned in my chest like a hot coal. "Ask her what she gave up for you." "Grace?" I whispered. Her eyes fluttered open at once, the way a mother wakes. Instantly, completely, ready. "What is it? Are you in pain? Should I call the nurse?" No, my throat closed. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." Something shifted in her face. A wariness. She sat up slowly, and her hand slipped off mine, and I missed the warmth of it immediately. "Okay," she said carefully. "The divorce," I said. "When I left, you didn't fight me. You didn't even argue. You just let me go." My voice was shaking now. "For 2 years, I told myself it was because you stopped loving me. But tonight I remembered something Vanessa said. She said to ask you what you gave up for me. She said that's the real reason you let me go so easily." I searched her eyes. Grace. What did she mean? For a long moment, Grace didn't say anything at all. She looked down at her own hands, and when she finally spoke, her voice was so small, it barely reached me. "I hoped you'd never find out," she said. The monitor beeped. My blood ran cold. "Find out what?" Grace stood up. She walked to the window, and she wrapped her arms around herself like she was cold, like she was holding some piece of herself together that might otherwise fall apart. Outside, the city glittered, indifferent. 1,000 little lights that didn't know or care what was breaking in this room. "Do you remember?" she said, still facing the window. "When Ellie was 2, when she got sick?" I went still. "The fever, the one that wouldn't break. We were in the emergency room for 3 days. It wasn't just a fever, Daniel." Grace turned around, and her eyes were wet. "The doctors told me, while you were at work, because someone had to keep the job that kept our insurance. They told me Ellie needed a treatment, an expensive one our insurance wouldn't fully cover. We were $40,000 short. I couldn't breathe. You never told me that. Because you would have done something stupid and noble, she said, with the ghost of a sad smile. You would have quit your job to take a second one. You would have destroyed your health, and it still wouldn't have been enough in time. Ellie didn't have time, Daniel. She had weeks. The room tilted around me. So what did you do? I whispered. But some part of me already knew. Some part of me was already breaking. Grace's tears spilled over. There was a man, she said, an old friend of my father's, wealthy. He'd offered me a job years ago, before we married. A good job, in another city, the kind of career I gave up to be your wife and Ellie's mother. And I never regretted it, not for one day. Her voice cracked. But when Ellie got sick, I went to him, and I asked him for the money. Grace, he gave it to me, she said. All of it. He saved our daughter's life. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. But he asked for something in return. The coal in my chest turned to ice. What did he ask for? I said. It wasn't a question anymore. It was a plea. Grace looked at me, and 2 years of hidden pain poured out of her eyes. He'd always loved me, she said, since we were young, and he told me he would give me every cent to save Ellie, but only if I promised that someday, when the time was right, I would leave you and come to him. He said a man like you would never be able to give me the life I deserved. He said you'd only hold me back. Her breath hitched. I told him no. I told him 100 times no. But Ellie was dying, Daniel. Our little girl was dying, and I would have promised him the moon. The whole world went silent. Even the machine seemed to stop counting. So I signed it, Grace whispered. A paper, a promise, that within 3 years, I would leave you. I felt like I was falling. The divorce, I breathed. You didn't fight me because you did it for me, she said. And now she was crying openly. The tears streaming down, years of loneliness, finally cracking open. When you told me you were leaving for Vanessa, I thought God was being merciful to me, because now I wouldn't have to break your heart. Now I wouldn't have to keep that terrible promise. You were leaving on your own, and it meant I could set you free without you ever knowing the debt hanging over us. Without Ellie ever knowing her mother had been bought and sold to save her life. I was crying now too. I couldn't stop it. You let me think you didn't love me. You let me walk out that door hating myself a little less, thinking you'd fallen out of love, when the truth was you were protecting me? Protecting Ellie? Carrying all of that alone? What else could I do? She sobbed. I loved you too much to trap you in a marriage with a debt like that hanging over it. And I loved Ellie too much to let her die. So I made the only choice a mother could make. She pressed her hand to her mouth. And I have paid for it every single day since. Alone. I reached for her. My arms were weak and full of tubes, but I reached anyway. And she came. She crossed the room, and she folded into me, careful of the wires. And I held my ex-wife and felt her whole body shake with 2 years of silent grief. I'm so sorry, I kept saying, into her hair. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You didn't know, she whispered. I should have known. The words tore out of me. I looked at everything you did, all that quiet love, all that sacrifice, and I called it boring. I traded you for a woman who threw a glass at me over a wedding dress. Grace, I was drowning, and I didn't even know it. Vanessa never loved me. She loved what I could buy her. And you, my voice broke completely. You sold your own freedom to save our daughter, and you never asked me for a thing. She pulled back just enough to look at me. Her face was a wreck of tears, and she had never in her life looked more beautiful to me. That's why I never changed the emergency contact, she said softly. Everyone told me to. My mother, my friends. Grace, you're divorced. Take his name off. Protect yourself. And every time, I couldn't do it. Because some stupid, hopeful part of me couldn't stand the thought of you lying hurt somewhere and me not knowing. Even after everything. Even after you left. She touched my face. I never stopped, Daniel. I tried to. I couldn't. And in that moment, holding the woman I'd thrown away, I made a decision. The first clear, right decision I'd made in 2 years. I'm going to fix this, I said. All of it. The debt. That man. Vanessa. Every broken piece. I don't know how yet, but I swear to you. The door opened. Vanessa stood there, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, in an expensive coat, with silver hair and cold, patient eyes, stood a man I had never seen before. But somehow, instantly, terribly, I knew exactly who he was. Grace went white as the sheets on my bed. "Marcus," she breathed. The man smiled at her, slow and sure, like a creditor who'd finally come to collect. "Hello, Grace," he said. "You've been a very hard woman to reach." His eyes slid to me, lying broken in the bed, and then to Vanessa beside him, and his smile widened. "But your husband's new wife and we've had the most illuminating conversation. It seems we both want the same thing." Vanessa crossed her arms and looked down at me with pure venom. "You want to run back to your ex-wife?" she said. "Fine. But first, Daniel, you should hear what she really owes, and who she really belongs to." The heart monitor screamed, and Grace's hand went ice-cold in mine. For a moment, nobody in that hospital room moved. Marcus stood in the doorway like he owned it. Like he owned the air, the walls, the woman beside my bed. His silver hair was combed back, his coat probably cost more than my house, and his eyes were the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Colder than the truck's headlights. Colder than the darkness I'd woken up from. "Marcus," Grace whispered again, and I felt her hand trembling in mine. That was all I needed to see. 2 years ago, I would have shrunk. 2 years ago, I was a man who thought he wasn't enough. Not rich enough, not exciting enough, not man enough. That's the poison Vanessa had fed me, drop by drop, until I believed it, until I traded gold for glitter. But I wasn't that man anymore. I'd just learned what real love actually looked like. It looked like a woman, selling her own future, to save a child's life, and never asking for thanks. So I did not shrink. I gripped Grace's hand tighter, and I said, in a voice steadier than I felt, "Get out of my room." Marcus chuckled. "Straight to business. I like that." He stepped inside anyway, uninvited, and Vanessa slithered in behind him, arms crossed, that ugly little smile on her face. "Daniel, don't be difficult," Vanessa said. "Marcus and I have worked something out. Something that gets us both what we want." She examined her nails. "He gets Grace. I get a very generous finder's fee. And you get to stop pretending you can afford the life you promised me." I looked at my wife, the woman I'd stood beside at an altar, and I felt the last thread of anything I'd ever felt for her snap clean. "You sold her," I said quietly. "You found out about Grace's debt, and instead of feeling 1 ounce of pity, you tried to sell the mother of my child to a stranger for a cut of the money." Vanessa shrugged. "I prefer broker to deal." Marcus smoothed his coat. "Let's all be adults." Grace signed an agreement, in exchange for $40,000, which saved your daughter. Let's not forget, she promised to leave you and come to me. Well, he spread his hands. You've left her. The marriage is over, so by the letter of our arrangement, Grace, the time has come. You belong with me now. She doesn't belong to anyone, I said. She signed. She signed under duress. My voice cracked like a whip, and the heart monitor spiked, and Grace put her hand on my chest to calm me. But I couldn't be calm. Her child was dying. You looked at a desperate mother, and you made her trade her life for her daughter's. That's not a contract, Marcus. That's a ransom, and there isn't a court on this earth that would enforce it. Marcus's smile flickered, just slightly. Just enough for me to see it. He wasn't as sure as he pretended. Grace saw it too. I felt her straighten beside me. He's right, she said. And her voice, which had been so small and frightened a moment ago, grew stronger with every word. I've been so afraid of you for so long, Marcus. Afraid of the shame. Afraid everyone would find out I'd been bought. Afraid Ellie would grow up and learn what her mother did. She lifted her chin. But I'm done being afraid. I did what I did to save my daughter's life, and I would do it again 1,000 times. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's the most honest thing I've ever done. You made a promise, Marcus said, but the ground was shifting under him now. I made a promise to a monster who preyed on a mother's worst moment, Grace shot back. And I'll pay back every cent of your money, with interest, over time, however long it takes. But you will never own me. You never did. You bought a piece of paper. You never touched my heart. and you never will." There was a silence you could have heard a pin drop into, and then a small voice from the doorway said, "Mommy?" Everyone turned. Ellie, my daughter, 5 years old, in her little yellow coat, clutching her grandmother's hand. Grace's mother must have brought her, must have thought I'd want to see her, not knowing she'd walk into this. Ellie's big brown eyes, Grace's eyes, took in the room, the machines, the strangers, and then found me. "Daddy?" she breathed. And she let go of her grandmother's hand, and she ran. She ran past Marcus, past Vanessa, and she reached my bed and grabbed the railing. And I leaned down through all the pain and all the tubes, and I scooped my little girl up onto my chest, and I held her, and she wrapped her tiny arms around my neck and pressed her face into my shoulder. "Daddy, I missed you," she whispered. "Why did you go away?" And that broke me completely. "I made a mistake, baby," I said into her hair, my tears falling into her curls. "The biggest mistake of my whole life. But I'm here now, and I'm never, ever going away again. I promise." I looked up, over my daughter's head, at Grace, who was crying, her hand pressed to her mouth, at Vanessa, whose face had gone pale and stiff, at Marcus, who was watching a father hold his child, and, for the first time, looked like a man realizing he'd walked into the wrong room to make his cold little deal. "Look around you, Marcus," I said. This is a family. This is what you tried to buy with $40,000 because you were too empty inside to ever build one yourself." I held Ellie tighter. "You can have your money back. Every cent. I'll spend the rest of my life paying it if I have to. But you cannot have them, because some things aren't for sale. And you're standing in a room full of them." Marcus stared at me for a long, long moment. Then something in his face, something I didn't expect, crumpled. Just slightly. Just at the edges. Maybe he saw his own loneliness reflected back at him. Maybe, somewhere under all that ice, there was still a scrap of a man who'd once loved a girl named Grace and had only ever known how to take, never how to be loved back. Maybe watching that little girl cling to her father showed him everything his money had never bought him. "Keep the money," he said suddenly. Grace's head snapped up. "What?" "The debt." Marcus's voice was rough. He wouldn't look at any of us. "Consider it paid. Forget the agreement. It was never going to hold up anyway." He turned toward the door, then paused, and for one heartbeat, he looked back at Grace. Not with hunger this time, but with something almost like regret. "You were right," he said quietly. "I never touched your heart. I've never touched anyone's. I think I forgot people even had them." He pulled his coat tighter. "Goodbye, Grace. Be happy. At least one of us should be." And he walked out, which left Vanessa. She stood there, stunned, her whole scheme collapsing around her designer heels. "Marcus, wait, what about we had a—" But he was gone. The door was already swinging shut. She whirled on me, and now the mask was completely off, and what was underneath was ugly and desperate. "Daniel, baby, listen to me. We can fix this. That was all a misunderstanding. I was scared about money. You know how I get." "Vanessa," I said. Something in my voice stopped her. "I want a divorce," I said. Her mouth opened, closed. "You lay in a bed while I was unconscious for a whole day, and you asked about the car," I said. "You tried to sell the mother of my child. You never once, in 2 years, asked how I felt. You never held my hand in the dark. You never said, 'I've got you.'" I looked down at Ellie, warm and safe against my chest, and at Grace, standing there with her whole heart in her eyes. I traded the best thing that ever happened to me for a woman who wouldn't cross the room to hold my hand. "Well, I'm done trading. Get your things out of my house by the time I'm discharged. My lawyer will handle the rest." Vanessa's face twisted. For a second I thought she'd scream, throw something, the way she always did. But there was no glass to throw here, no audience to perform for, just a woman who'd finally run out of things to take. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You'll be poor and boring and stuck with her forever." I smiled. Actually smiled. For the first time in what felt like years. "God, I hope so," I said. And she left too. The door closed, and then it was just us. The 3 of us. A father in a hospital bed, a little girl in his arms, and the woman who'd sacrificed everything, standing there like she wasn't quite sure she was allowed to hope. "Grace," I said softly. "Come here." She hesitated. Daniel, you don't have to. Just because Marcus is gone doesn't mean you owe me. Grace, I reached out my free hand. I'm not doing this because I owe you. I spent 2 years thinking love was fireworks and red dresses and feeling like a big shot. I was so wrong. Love is a woman who never took my name off a form because she couldn't bear the thought of me hurting alone. Love is the person who gives everything and asks for nothing. My voice broke. I let you go once because I was a fool. Please, give me a lifetime to make it right. Come home. For a moment she just looked at me. This woman who had carried so much, alone, for so long. Then she crossed the room, and she took my hand. And she and Ellie and I folded together into one shaking, crying, laughing knot of arms in that little hospital bed, the machine beeping steady and strong beside us, counting a heart that finally knew what it wanted. I've got you, Grace whispered against my forehead. I've got you too, I said. This time, I've got you too. 6 months later, I stood in a small backyard under a string of white lights, holding Grace's hands, and I married her again. Same woman, wiser man. Ellie threw the flower petals and got most of them in her own hair. There was no marble, no designer anything, no crowd to impress. Just the people who mattered, and a love I'd almost thrown away forever. I never did become rich. Marcus's money got repaid slowly anyway, because Grace insisted. She said she didn't want to owe anyone anything ever again, and I understood. We're not fancy, some months are tight, but every single night, in the dark, when the weight of the world sits on my chest, there's a woman who curls against my back and says 3 words that are worth more than everything Vanessa ever wanted. I've got you. And every morning, there's a little girl who climbs into our bed and asks if we can make pancakes, and I get to say yes. I get to be there. I get to stay. I almost lost it all, because I couldn't see what was right in front of me. It took a truck running a red light, a hospital bed, and the sight of my ex-wife, crying over a man she had every reason to hate, to finally open my eyes. Don't wait for a truck. Don't wait for the darkness. Look at who's holding your hand right now. Look at who stays. Because sometimes the person you're searching for is the one you already walked away from. And if you're lucky, so lucky, they'll still be there when you finally turn around. So let me ask you something, and be honest, because only you know the real answer. In your own life, is there someone whose quiet, steady love you've been overlooking? Someone who says, I've got you, in 100 small ways, while you keep chasing the fireworks? Who is the Grace in your life? And have you told them lately that you see them? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone, do me one small favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. And there's someone out there right now who needs to hear this one. Share it with them. Until next time, look up, hold on tight to the ones who stay, and never let the best thing that ever happened to you walk out the door.